This video contains spoilers. What does the ending of Bones and All mean? In this video, we'll explain the ending of Bones and All and how the director thinks that his gory cannibal movie should be filed under romance. Furthermore, how are critics feeling about Will Smith's performance in Emancipation, and does Amanda Seyfried think Mean Girls 2 is ever going to happen? Find out later in the video. But first, the Bones and All movie ending explained. Italian film director Luca Guadagnino comes with a new, ambitious love story that is just as sweet as it is creepy. Bones and All is Guadagnino's latest project, which was playing in select theaters ahead of its wide release on the 23rd of November 2022. Just in time for Thanksgiving. Though it's definitely not recommended to go see Bones and All with the whole family, it's been rated R for a good reason. While some might say that the plot of Bones and All meanders a tad too much, the movie's cinematography is breathtaking, and several shots will stay with you for a while after the movie has ended. And while there's no denying the artistic power of Bones and All, the movie ends on a somewhat ambiguous note that might cause some confusion. So, does Maren eat Lee at the end of Bones and All after he gets stabbed in the chest as he's protecting Maren from Sully? At first, Maren refuses to listen to Lee, who tells Maren that she should eat him, but then she starts licking his wound. While we never actually see Maren eat Lee, it sure is heavily suggested that she does. It should be safe to assume that Maren will just go right back to her cannibal ways. Don't you agree? Next, Bones and All director thinks his gory cannibal movie should be filed under romance. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Bones and All director Luca Guadagnino talks about everything from the movie to his next project and what it's been like to team up with Timothée Chalamet. But how did the director get involved with the project in the first place? Guadagnino says that it has to be the beautiful quality of David Kojenek's writing and script, though the real pulling-in point must have been how this character could carry moral struggle within oneself, an urge of overcoming something they felt was something they couldn't deal with. Guadagnino said to Entertainment Weekly and claims that he immediately knew that Chalamet was the only one who could ever portray Lee. So, in a world where video rental stores are still a thing, where would Guadagnino file his own just-released movie? Under horror or romance? Guadagnino first pointed out that the ideal situation would be having the option to file Bones and All under Guadagnino. But if he had to choose between the two proposed options, he would definitely choose romance. According to the filmmaker, there's a tension between immersion, and he always strives to find the balance of making something look believable without making it look too shocking. Where would you file Bones and All? Following reviews on Will Smith's new movie, Emancipation, are split, but what do they say of Smith himself? Critics' reviews are trickling in for the Apple TV Plus slave drama featuring Will Smith called Emancipation. It's Smith's first performance since his King Richard Oscar win and The Slap, so fans have been wildly curious about how he'll do. Well, early reviews have arrived, and while critics seem to be thoroughly mixed about Emancipation as a whole, they seemingly all agree on the performance of Smith, who has received praise for his role in the movie. Emancipation marked the first time that Smith worked together with director Antoine Fuqua, who you may recognize from The Equalizer, Southpaw, and The Magnificent Seven. Emancipation is set to be released on Apple TV Plus on the 9th of December 2022, but has also been given an early limited theatrical release on the 2nd of December 2022, just ahead of its streaming debut. Emancipation follows the story of a real-life slave who lived around the mid-1800s, whose whip scars were photographed and disseminated, which proved instrumental in the growing abolitionist movement. One complaint is that Fuqua has played it a little too much on the safe side, undermining the tone of the serious and very real narrative that's supposed to be at the center of the movie. However, Smith has given it his all, and it shows. Whatever the verdict ends up being, Smith does not disappoint. Hold up, there's more coming. Next, does Amanda Seyfried believe Mean Girls 2 will ever happen? The director of Violent Night explains why it had to be David Harbour playing Santa Claus, and Robert Downey Jr. has officially gotten his first 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Stay tuned to find out more. First up, does Amanda Seyfried believe Mean Girls 2 will ever happen? A recent interview found Mean Girls veterans Amanda Seyfried and Lindsay Lohan discussing the possibility of a Mean Girls 2. Seyfried featured in the 2004 classic as Karen Smith, sharing the screen with Lohan, Rachel McAdams, Lacey Chabert, and Lizzie Kaplan. Mean Girls was penned by the talented Tina Fey and directed by Mark Waters. Mean Girls is a high school teen comedy that centers on Katie, portrayed by Lohan, whose high school experience intensifies when she's welcomed into the school's clique of most popular girls called the Plastics. Even though the movie is almost 2 decades old now, Mean Girls is still loved by many and has become iconic thanks to its witty humor and memorable scenes, and loyal fans have never given up hopes on a sequel. And now Mean Girls is being adapted into a Broadway musical, bearing the same name and everything. There have been reports that Paramount is working on a Mean Girls movie musical, with Faye returning to write and Samantha Jane and Arturo Perez Jr. attached to the project to direct as of 2021. But what does Seyfried and Lohan think about all this? Lohan admitted that it would be really fun to get the cast back together for a Mean Girls 2, but Seyfried wasn't convinced that it would happen, adding that a musical movie about Mean Girls just wouldn't be the same. But if a real Mean Girls is ever going to happen, Tina will get around to it at some point, both of them agreed. Next up, the director of Violent Night explains why it had to be David Harbour playing Santa Claus. Sometimes things just click. This is exactly what happened with David Harbour and the role of Santa Claus in Tommy Wirkola's Violent Night. Violent Night is nothing like any movie featuring Santa Claus you've ever seen before, and has him acting as an action hero as he fights a group of mercenaries that have attacked a wealthy family's home, where a young girl has also been caught in the dangerous crossfire of this nonsense, and Santa Claus finds himself hopelessly caught up in the situation as well. Pat Casey and Josh Miller, writers for Violent Night, initially had the idea of an action hero Santa and combined it with the origins of Santa, while also leaning heavily into the ties to Norse mythology, and Odin in specific. Wirkola explained in an interview with Screen Rant how he was looking through names with the studio and producers in search of someone who could possibly fill the boots of the character they'd conjured up when someone suggested David Harbour. According to Wirkola, everyone just kind of looked at each other, knowing that Harbour would be absolutely perfect for the role, and that was it. Harbour was given the script, he liked it, and the rest is history. Are you going to watch Violent Night? And lastly, Robert Downey Jr. officially got his first 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Can you imagine Robert Downey Jr. spent a whole decade in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Tony Stark, even receiving 2 Oscar nominations for his performance? In fact, 2008's Iron Man is the movie that started it all, and for all we know, the MCU would never have become what it is today if it wasn't for Downey Jr.'s instrumental performance as Tony, a character that has been the anchor that helped settle the MCU as the multi-billion-dollar franchise that we know and love today. Despite that, Robert Downey Jr.'s first 100% on Rotten Tomatoes comes from a project that has no connection to the MCU. The new documentary, Senior, has a perfect 100% critics rating as of the first 22 ratings, which is bound to fluctuate in the coming time, but still. It's Robert Downey Jr.'s very first 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and no wonder that it's this project given how heartfelt and personal Senior is to Downey Jr., as it chronicles the life and career of his late father, Robert Downey Sr., who was an influential underground filmmaker in his day. Looking at the reviews so far, Senior isn't just about Downey Jr.'s turbulent relationship with his father, but is also a touching portrait of the rebel filmmaker's whole life and work, even including the final days leading up to his death in July of 2021 due to complications from Parkinson's disease. The 100% promise is that Senior is going to be something else. And that's a wrap. Do you believe Maren ate Lee at the end of Bones and All? Let us know in the comments below what you think. And while you're down there, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.